In a photography class, for any instructor for that matter, the challenge is to help the participant realize that the larger the aperture, the smaller the number, and smaller the aperture, the larger the number. For instance, f2.8 is a larger aperture than f4, and let's say f11 is a smaller aperture than f8. Since we all learnt arithmetic and we know 11 is more than 8 and 4 is more than 2.8, it takes a bit of time before we override our mind's understanding and educate it about this concept. But how many of you wonder why on earth is this the way it is? Have you asked your photography instructor or friends why aperture numbers are contradicting arithmetic? Hi again, this is Jayant Sharma, and in this video, let's dissect the aperture values and understand why larger aperture numbers mean smaller size of the opening and vice versa. But let me quickly remind you to subscribe to this channel, the Toehold TV, and also ask YouTube to notify you when we upload new videos. So, have you wondered why we have accepted that a smaller aperture has a larger number and otherwise? Let's not just accept what's taught to us. Let's question the reason. Let's consider a 100mm lens. The focal length is 100 mm. I hope you know what's 100 mm here. In fact, it's the distance from the sensor to the focal point, by the way. Now, for the sake of this discussion, let's say we open the aperture of the lens, that's the opening in the lens, to a diameter of 50 millimeters. So what I mean here is the diameter of the opening of the hole in the lens, which is 50 mm. That's a gigantic opening for the light to enter the camera. Do you agree? Perfect. Now let's understand how the f number works. If you simply divide the focal length by the diameter of the opening, that's the focal length of 100 mm divided by the dia 50, then the quotient of this division is 2. So let's start calling this f2. In the same lens, if the opening of the aperture, the hole in the lens, is now reduced to 25 millimeters instead of 50 in the earlier example, then let's do the division again. The focal length is 100 mm and the new diameter of the opening is 25. So 100 divided by 25 is 4. That's why it's f4. Did you notice, even though the diameter of the aperture has reduced from 50 to 25, the f number has gone from 2 to 4. Let's continue doing the reduction of aperture. This time, let's reduce the opening to a dia 10 millimeters. So the focal length is 100 and the aperture is 10 mm dia. And now when we divide 100 by 10, the quotient is 10. That's f10 for you. Isn't it now making sense? Why f2.8 is larger than f4 and why f10 is smaller in the lens than f4? That was simple, right? There's no rocket science here. It's class 3 division. But why is the aperture called the f number or the fstop? Since the aperture signifies the ratio of the focal length to diameter as discussed, f is the focal length in this representation. So next time you're in a workshop and you're shooting at f4 and the instructor asks you to stop down or underexpose by one stop or reduce the aperture by one stop, you know why you need to be at f5.6. Even though 5.6 is a larger number than f4, it is a smaller aperture.